what he's doing here is what I like to call comparing apples to fish tacos. Because the two have absolutely nothing to do with one another.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about faith, firearms, and freedom. We talk about guns, hunting, competition, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 68, brought to you by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. CooksHolsters.com. First off, I want to apologize for the voice you're hearing. I sound like the love child of Sam Elliott and Clarence Frogman Jones. I've been fighting off a cold for over a week. I was sounding better earlier in the week and thought maybe that I could sound like myself again, but the froggy voice came back on Friday, and I think I'm just wearing myself out with all the projects at work that if you've listened to the last few episodes, one of our coworkers left earlier in the month and dropped a bunch of projects in my lap, which means I've been just covered up. I have not been to the range. I haven't done any dry fire. I haven't made any bullets. I haven't shot any matches. I had to cancel my trip to Atlanta for the NRA annual meetings this weekend. I was really looking forward to getting down there and meeting some of my colleagues in the gun rights community, other members of the Self-Defense Radio Network, including our own Mia Anstine. The Silver Dollar IDPA Championship is happening this weekend. It's in Wichita Falls, just 90 minutes away, and I still can't get there. But Sergeant Bill is there, along with Mrs. Sergeant Bill, and they'll be shooting with Joey and Jackie Russo, the two newest members of the Cook's Holsters Armed Lutheran Radio IDPA team. I wish I could have been there to shoot with you guys and to meet you. Can't wait to see the pictures. So, speaking of IDPA, Cook's Holsters will again be one of the sponsors at the Arkansas State IDPA Championship this year. The match is coming up May 20th. It's at the Mountain Valley Sportsmen's Association in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I'm really looking forward to getting out there. It's my next, I haven't shot a match since Louisiana State. Looking forward to getting back up to MVSA and representing Cook's Holsters. Hopefully, once these projects are done, I can get back to my dry fire routine and start prepping for that match next week. Before we get started, I want to encourage you to check out the Reformation Gun Club. It's our membership site where you can access members-only audio content from all of our contributors, get special member discounts from sponsors. May's content is going to have some cool stuff. Full-length interviews with Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society podcast, interviews from our Christmas wish list episode last year, including our sponsor Bob Cook, and new tips from Aaron, Mia, Sergeant Bill, and Clinging to God and Guns with Pastor Bennett. So check that out. It's at gunclub.armedlutheran.us. Sign up today for just $1.50 a month. There are yearly and multi-year plans available if you'd like to save a little bit on the rates. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. In addition to the sound of my voice, we're doing something a little bit different today. In recent months, states have passed, I think there's 13 states now, and there are a number of others debating or considering the idea of permitless concealed carry. It's also referred to as Vermont carry or constitutional carry. In varying forms, these laws allow common citizens to carry concealed firearms without the need to obtain a permit first. The phrase, and I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of background here, for those of you who don't know what this issue is about, the phrase constitutional carry reflects the view that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution allows for no restrictions or other regulations on gun ownership. The idea also stems from the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, found in Article 5, Section 2, where the Supremacy Clause declares the Constitution as the supreme law of the land, thus the term constitutional carry. Supporters of constitutional carry relate that the Second Amendment is decreed by the United States Constitution and therefore takes precedence over any other gun law that would restrict or violate the right to keep and bear arms in any way. So that kind of gives you a little history. And like I said, as of March, I think there were 13 states that require a permit. There's, I think, another 9 states maybe that are considering these laws, including Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, and a few others. I usually leave the content decisions to my contributors. They've got a lot of latitude and freedom, editorial control over their segments. They're free to choose their topics, but this week I asked them to do something for the show. I asked them all to comment from their different perspectives on the idea of constitutional carry. We'll get the show started right after this. Aaron Israel is up first with his take on constitutional carry. It's our Constitutional Carry Show coming up right after this, right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
With those words, our founding fathers changed the world. They launched an experiment in freedom, where common lawful citizens are free to speak and gather and worship as they choose. But first among those freedoms is the one freedom that makes the rest possible. For 130 years, we've worked to preserve freedom first. I'm Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association.
The Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast is for people who are thinking of getting a gun, and for those who already own one. Each week, we invite a firearms instructor to discuss the news. At Self-Defense Gun Stories, we study responsible gun owners who protected themselves and the people they love. Were these gun owners lucky, or were they properly trained and prepared? What would you do if you were in their shoes? What should you do? Come listen at selfdefensegunstories.com.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.
So how do I feel about the question of constitutional carry? I'll be honest with you, I'm torn. I've got my concerns about this, and my concerns are, let me get out of the way first off. Let me just say that I support, of course, your right to carry. The Second Amendment protects our inalienable right to keep and bear arms. But first off, let's recognize that some restrictions apply, right? And we have, as a society, accepted some of those restrictions. Convicted felons lose their Second Amendment rights. Those who are adjudicated mentally defective do not have their Second Amendment rights. So there are some restrictions. There are some reasonable restrictions on the Second Amendment. If you want to argue with me that there should be no restrictions at all, and anybody and everybody, regardless of their criminal status, should be allowed to buy a gun, that's a whole different conversation, and I think you're nuts. But being that as it may, let me run through some of my concerns with the idea of constitutional carry. The first is the distinction between the average citizen and concealed carry permit holders. Yes, concealed carry permit holders make mistakes. Yes, concealed carry permit holders violate the law. But statistically speaking, concealed carry permit holders are vastly more law-abiding, 21 times more law-abiding than the average citizen. They are statistically more law-abiding even than uniformed police officers. No offense to Sergeant Bill and Sergeant Mrs. Sergeant Bill. So we have statistics on our side. Whenever somebody commits a crime with a gun, whenever somebody does something stupid with a gun, we are capable of saying he's not a concealed carry permit holder. That permit gives us a distinction, statistically a distinction between us and everyone else. We can say, look, concealed carry permit holders are more law-abiding. Once that distinction disappears, we're no better than everybody else. There is no distinction after that. our arguments, when we debate anti-gunners, when we talk about the right to own a gun, the right of self-defense, when we talk about the Second Amendment, our arguments are based on logic and facts. The anti-gunners argue from emotion. They don't have facts on their side. They generally have to manufacture those facts. My second concern, and I don't know that this certainly isn't enough for me to, again, these are all little concerns that if you add them all together are running around in my head. No single concern is enough for me to say, nope, I'm against it. But you put all these together and I start to question and I have some issues. The second concern that I have is the effect of constitutional carry on other legislation. We're on the verge of getting some major changes to gun laws in this country. We have the opportunity to make historic changes. For example, concealed carry reciprocity. If you carry without a permit, you can't carry across state lines because a lot of states are not going to allow you to carry in their states if you're not a citizen of that state. I mean, we're on the verge of being able to pass a law in this country that treats your state concealed carry permit like a driver's license so that you could cross state lines and not be arrested in New Jersey, for example, because you have a valid license to carry in Texas. What concerns me is that those who say, yeah, I can see that. That seems safe. I got no problem with that. Concealed carry permit, again, getting back to the statistics thing, I'm okay with the idea that they could carry across state lines. Oh, wait a minute. You don't have to have a permit in that state? Maybe not. The states that have permits are not going to allow you to carry if you don't have a permit. So it doesn't really do you any good. We're also on the verge, I think, of being able to roll back a lot of the crazy gun-free zone laws. I think the American people are coming to the understanding that gun-free zones are in general kill zones for psychopaths, and that allowing law-abiding citizens, those with valid concealed carry permits, to carry in those areas is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you open up carry to just anybody and everybody with no permit, I think you're going to have a much harder time relaxing gun-free zones and getting support from the public for relaxing gun-free zones. There is a perception by the permit holder that once you've gone through that 4 or 8 or 12 hours of training, that somehow that you're trained and that's all you need, when you really have only been given sort of a primer. There's also the perception among the public that concealed carry permit holders are well trained, and that there is a distinction between concealed carry permit holders and the average gun owner. And if you tear down that barrier and you say, okay, we're going to allow anybody to carry, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see people not so supportive of the idea of eliminating gun-free zones. My fear is that the gun-free zones are not going to go away because they're going to see, instead of, ooh, responsible concealed carry permit holder, you're safe, they're going to see the goofball who points a gun at his friend when taking a selfie at the public range, and they're not going to want any part of that in the public space. Which brings me to my next point. And this has to do with the idea of where you're going to be able to carry. This is probably my biggest concern. Open carry of handguns has been legal in Texas for now almost a year and a half. In that time, in the 16 months since that became law, I've seen one person open carrying. One. In Texas, instead of the standard kind of pictogram sign with the gun, the silhouette of the Beretta 92F with the red circle around it and the red line crossing it out, the no guns sign, the sort of traditional. In Texas, you have to have very specific language on your no gun signs. You have to actually have all of the words of the statute prohibiting open or concealed carry in your establishment. And it has to be, I think, in 1-inch letters in contrasting colors, and it has to be posted prominently outside your business. When I got here to Texas, I saw very few 30-06 signs. The statute is Statute 30.06, which prohibits the carrying of a concealed weapon on the premises. When they passed the open carry law, allowing people to open carry, Rather than change Statute 30-06, they added 30-07 and required that establishments must post a 30-07 sign in order to prohibit someone from open carrying on their premises. So a business, if they want to prohibit open carry, has to display the 30-07, and if they want to prohibit both, they have to display both the 30-06 and the 30-07 signs in their window. When I first got here to Texas, I saw very few 30-06 signs. I could probably count the number of 30-06 signs on one hand. After open carry passed, that changed. Not only did more 30-07 signs start appearing, but people started putting up 30-06 signs as well. People who didn't really think or care about the idea of concealed carry permit holders, now that there's the prospect of the open carry people coming in with a gun visibly on their hip, these businesses that hadn't really given this issue a lot of thought now are starting to think about it. And here's why. The open carry movement in Texas, and really around the country, didn't do gun rights a great service. You may recall 2013, 2014, back when it was Moms Demand Action, before it became every town for illegal mayors with guns or whatever. Bloomberg's bunch, the Shannon Watts anti-gun mommies, they would protest outside of restaurants and businesses that did not have a policy against carrying guns in their establishments. They did this to Target, they did this to Home Depot, they did it to Chipotle, they did it to Starbucks. Basically, wherever these lily-white, effete liberals wanted to go eat or shop, if they didn't see an anti-gun sign, they wanted that business to put one up, because they didn't want to see a gun where they went to shop or to drink their expensive coffee or eat their Marxist burritos. Some of those establishments gave in. Starbucks held out. Starbucks basically said, look, we're not getting in the middle of this debate. We are in the business of selling coffee, and whatever the state law is, we're going to respect it. You know, hey, we're going to obey the law. We're not going to get in the middle of this political debate. We're not here for politics. We're here for coffee. So gun rights advocates thinking, hey, this is a great victory for us. Instead of going to their local Starbucks and thanking them for their support or writing letters to the CEO or sending them emails, some decided that they would go to Starbucks open carrying. They posed with guns in Starbucks stores and took pictures. Some even went to Newtown, Connecticut, in the aftermath of the Newtown massacre, and decided to make a political statement by openly carrying firearms into the Starbucks in Newtown. The stores are in the business of selling coffee. They're in the business of making money, selling their products, and making their customers happy so that they come back. This was the reason that they rejected the complaints by the gun controllers, was that they didn't want to get embroiled in this. They didn't want to be used as a political tool. They want customers. They don't care whether their customers are gun owners or anti-gunners. They want to sell coffee. They wanted to stay out of it. We dragged them into it. We made a statement in their stores and made them a part of the gun rights debate and made it look like they support our position by going into their stores and waving guns around. There were pictures of people who had unholstered their openly carried handguns and posed for pictures with their cup of coffee. There was the Fat Mall Ninja and his SKS, or the guy with the shotgun, the guy with the AR-15, a bunch of knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing neckbeards who thought, this is what we're going to do to rub it in the faces of the anti-gunners. Well, guess what? It backfired, because in response to that, Starbucks made an announcement that they didn't want you to bring the guns in the store. Don't bring your guns in. Please, leave them at home. Leave them in the car. We don't want them. The anti-gunners made this out to be some kind of victory on their part. It wasn't an actual change of company policy, but still, those people in those photographs became the caricature of the gun rights movement. That's the image people see when you talk about open carry now. And now if you talk about, hey, those people who can now open carry, now we're going to let anybody and everybody carry a gun without a permit, concealed, more and more businesses are going to say, you know what, I'm not taking any chances because I'm not in the business to support gun rights. I'm in the business to support the owner and his family and our employees. I'm in the business of making a good product and making our customers happy. And I don't care about your political arguments. So guess what? My customers are not going to be satisfied and happy if they have a bunch of goofballs in their stores waving guns around. So 30-06 and 30-07 signs are going to start appearing more and more places. So yeah, if constitutional carry passes, great victory, right? For gun rights. Fewer and fewer places to carry your guns. Now listen, let me get this straight. Let me make this very clear. I support the right to open carry. I support the open carry, the principle of open carry. Constitutionally, you should have the right. I don't support the open carry movement in Texas, for example. The kind of goofballs who tried to make a name for themselves by doing stupid and audacious things. When stupid people do stupid things with guns, that stink rubs off on the rest of us. So now when people think of open carry, they don't think of that. You've seen that Shutterstock image, probably. I've seen it 1,000 times, of nice little old lady. She's probably in her late 60s, early 70s. She's wearing a green shirt of some kind, short, kind of spiky silver hair, and she's got a gun on her hip. You've probably seen it 100 times. That's not what people think of when they think of open carry. They think of the goofballs standing in Starbucks. And so in the aftermath of open carry passing, because of the kinds of people who were involved with that activism, the things that they had done to force open carry to pass, more and more places are making themselves off limits to open carry and concealed carry. And I think that if constitutional carry passes, more and more businesses will do the same. And yay, you'll be able to carry your gun, except there'll be nowhere to carry your gun, because every business you go to, just about, is going to become off limits by law. So while I support the idea, I think there are going to be consequences. And there are consequences that are bred from the open carry movement that are going to make it more restrictive, not less. What are we really going to accomplish? This is a solution looking for a problem. And I have a feeling that constitutional carry, if you push it, it's at the cost of other things that are more important. I would rather see us focus on other areas like reciprocity, like eliminating gun-free zones, like making it easier for people to get concealed carry permits. But those things aren't going to happen, or are less likely to happen, because we're pushing to allow anybody and everybody to carry a gun. I'm not opposed to the idea of everybody having a gun and everybody carrying one. I support the idea of constitutional carry, but I don't support it at the expense of other issues that we need to address, like gun-free zones and reciprocity. I'd rather address those things and then talk about constitutional carry. Just my 2 cents. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share with us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this issue. Visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. Send us an email or leave us a voice message, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to play it or read that message on the air, or you can leave us a comment in the show notes for today's show, episode 68.
Hey, this is Sean from the Gun Blog Variety Cast. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
So how many of you have been in this situation? You hear about a gun or you read about it, you decide you want to check it out, you go and you try it out at a gun show or at your local gun store, and you decide to buy. Maybe it feels really good in your hand, the price is right, the size is perfect, but then you take it to the range and the trigger is awful. Now you've got that gun that you've invested your time and your money in, but you don't like to shoot it. So you either trade it, maybe you try to sell it and hope that you can make some of your money back, or you grin and bear it. Well, what if I told you that you can get the performance that you wanted out of the gun that you already have? Galloway Precision makes trigger conversion kits for a wide range of guns to produce smoother, lighter, better functioning triggers. Galloway Precision is your carry pistol specialist. Check out their complete collection of performance parts at GallowayPrecision.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. Make the gun that you choose to carry better with precision parts from GallowayPrecision.com.
It's time for this week's self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense.
Hey folks, this is Aaron Israel with Fundamental Defense here with your personal defense tip of the week. This week I want to talk to you about constitutional carry from an instructor's perspective. Now this issue is very near and dear to me as a resident of the state of Texas, which I'm sure a lot of you are since this podcast is broadcasted from the state of Texas. And even if you're not, your state might be considering similar legislation. What constitutional carry is the idea that the Second Amendment gives you your license to carry a concealed handgun because it is your fundamental human right to have the tools necessary to protect yourself. The Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and the fact of the matter is that having to pay the government for a card that you put in your wallet is an infringement on your right to carry a firearm. Now, whenever there's any kind of legislation that loosens up the restrictions, the infringements that we have on our rights as Second Amendment people, there's an outcry from the left that says, hey, there's going to be blood in the streets. They did it related to concealed carry in Texas back in the 90s. They did it related to open carry in Texas and Oklahoma over the past 5 years, and it just never pans out. There's not any increase in violence. In fact, we usually see a different impact. I just did a project recently for my master's program showing the correlation between loosening of gun restrictions and lowering of violent crime in the states that have passed them. If you look at the work that John Lott's done, he's gone into a lot more detail than I could ever hope to about the statistics and what they really say about gun rights and the lowering of crime, and the argument is in our favor. The science is in our favor. So these scare tactics of if you loosen up gun restrictions, you get rid of licensing, you make it easier for people to have access to guns to defend themselves, that there's going to be blood in the streets, there's just no basis for that. But where I want to expand is from the perspective of an instructor. Now, unfortunately, in the state of Texas, I run into a lot of instructors who teach the licensing class who are anti-constitutional carry. And the reason that they'll give you is they say, well, at least the licensing class gives people something, right? They're likely to get nothing unless they come to the licensing class. And if they go to the licensing class, at least they're going to get something. Now, they will get something, but I'm not sure that something is worth their while. It doesn't take that much to get certified to become a licensed to carry instructor in the state of Texas. Now, this is nothing to denigrate the program. Any state-mandated program is going to be like this. But you go through 4 days of death by PowerPoint, basically, taught by state troopers and state attorneys that covers disability laws, basic business regulations, and basically gives you the same use of force class that you would get as an armed citizen in the actual license to carry class that you're going to teach. It goes into a little bit more detail. You have a little bit more discussion, but not really much more than that. And unfortunately, a lot of the instructors that are out there teaching the state-mandated license to carry class are really just certified PowerPoint readers. They don't understand the case law behind the use of force laws and how it gets applied when you actually go to court. And actually, the state of Texas tells you that you really shouldn't go into detail about all that stuff and really just wants you to give a basic knowledge of, okay, here's what the penal code says, take it or leave it. Now, a lot of instructors who are worth their salt are going to go further than that, and those are the classes that you should seek out. But unfortunately, a lot of them you're going to go to and you're just going to get read a PowerPoint slide, and then you're going to go out to the range and shoot 50 rounds in the state of Texas. Some other places, all you have to do is go out there and pull the trigger, and you're quote-unquote certified. Now, the problem with that is that base level of knowledge a lot of people think is good enough, quote-unquote, because the state gives them a card that they can put in their wallet, so they think that they are certified. Now, what that certification really means is that they met the bare minimum standard to be able to exercise what's already a constitutional right. So my take on it is that since it gives people that false sense of security, they're able to put that card in their wallet, a lot of people are not going to go any further than that. Even though any good licensing instructor is going to preach, hey, you need to get to further training. You need to get out and you need to take a class like combat-focused shooting. You need to get out and you need to practice with your firearm. A lot of people think, well, why should I? The state gave me a card that says that I'm good to go, so why do I need to get out there? And then you get some people, probably 10% of my students that have come through a licensing class will actually come back and see me for follow-on training or go see another qualified instructor for follow-on training. Now, that 10% that actually takes responsibility for their personal defense and goes and tries to learn something, actually takes that extra step, those people, regardless of whether the state tells them to or not, are going to come and see me for follow-on training. Even if they don't have to get a license from me, if we have constitutional carry, they're still going to come see me for a defensive-focused shooting class. They're still going to go out and practice with their handgun because they know that it's their responsibility that comes with their right that they need to be able to protect themselves efficiently, they need to be able to do it safely, and they don't want to be a liability to their fellow armed citizens. Now, the people that are out there that just go and check the block, which is really all a licensing class does, those people are not going to seek out training. And really, they're not going to get any more training than they would by not going to any class at all, just by going and checking the block at the licensing class. I've had those people in class before. They don't participate. They don't pay attention. When we get out to the range, they're already asking about how long are we going to be out here? Are we almost done? Are you sure that we don't have to do this any longer? Can I get out of here? When's lunch? That sort of thing. They're not really interested in learning anything. They're interested in checking the block and getting out of the class. So those people are still going to be the same, whether you give them a license and certify their ignorance and their inability and their unwillingness to learn, or you don't give them a license at all and they just walk around ignorant carrying their guns. Those people are always going to be there. But the real reason that I think a lot of instructors are anti-constitutional carry is because they think it's going to cut into their business. Now, if you run a licensing mill, if all you do is teach the license to carry class and you run 50 people through a weekend and you hand out all kinds of certificates, and there's not very many of these, but there's one in every major city that just runs them through like cattle every Saturday. Yeah, you're going to lose a lot of money. I hate to break it to you. But most of those classes are really not worthwhile, and usually those places don't offer much follow-on training, and if they did, they would stay in business. In fact, in states where we have constitutional carry, like I've got some friends who teach for the Personal Defense Network out in Arizona, they blow me away as far as the ability they have to bring in students because people don't have to take an extra Saturday after they get their license to come train. They say, hey, look, I need to get training, and they go out and they take a defensive shooting class instead of a licensing class. Now, those same people in the state of Texas, they would think, okay, I need to go train, and then they sign up for a licensing class, and then that's all they do. So really, if you're teaching a worthwhile curriculum, you're probably going to see a spike in enrollment in your defensive shooting classes, while you may see a drop-off in actual licensing classes, but that should work itself out. So if you're running a licensing mill, yeah, you're going to go out of business, but hey, I'm not really going to miss you. Those licensing mills really don't perform much of a service as far as getting good information out there, and really the fewer of them there are, that's going to be better off for us as far as people who care about personal defense. So that's my perspective as a trainer. So I'm okay with sacrificing the licensing side of my business because on principle, I believe that the Second Amendment is your license to carry, and I also know from having friends who teach in other states that my enrollment on my actual defensive shooting classes where you actually learn things, and classes like Masad Ayoub's Mag 20, Andrew Bronca's legal defense class, those are going to get more enrollment too because the people who really want to seek out that information are still going to do it, and the people who don't are the people who just check the block in the CHL class anyway, and you know what? You're never going to get rid of them completely. So with rights come responsibilities, and it's our responsibility as trainers to go out there and push people to get the proper training. You're never going to get everybody to buy into that, but I don't think that the government requiring you to do some base level of, compulsory training that barely checks the block is really the solution to it. So I am all for constitutional carry, and if you live in the state of Texas, you need to get in touch with your representatives and tell them to vote for the constitutional carry bills that are in committee right now, and hopefully by the end of this legislative session, we're able to exercise our right without having to pay the government for it. So that's my take on constitutional carry, and that's your personal defense tip for the week. Go out there and advocate for your right to carry, keep, and bear arms because the Second Amendment already guarantees it to you. And not only that, your Creator, God, guarantees it to you as a fundamental human right. Thanks for tuning in.
Aaron Israel is a Personal Defense Network contributor and owner of Fundamental Defense. You can find out more and sign up for any of Aaron's classes at fundamentaldefense.com.
As many of you know, Sergeant Bill and I are competitive shooters. We're also reloaders. Bill helped me to get started last year, but I've still got a lot to learn. One thing I do know, though, you need a good source for supplies and components. So let me tell you about U.S. Reloading Supply. Yeah, there are bigger suppliers out there, but what sets U.S. Reloading Supply apart from the rest is their dedication to customer satisfaction. Check them out at usreloadingsupply.com. They carry the top name brands like Starline, Rainier, Barry's, Remington, Spear, and Hornady. If you've got a special order like primers and powder that you don't see on their website, give them a call for a quote. I did and got a great price. Excellent customer service, fast delivery, prices that include shipping, and a promise to match or beat any retailer's price, including shipping. Call them today, 941-451-7357, or visit them today at usreloadingsupply.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. usreloadingsupply.com.
The percentage of women who own guns is growing. American women are more knowledgeable and better equipped to defend themselves than ever before. So, why is it that every time I go to a gun shop, I feel like they're talking down to me? Like, hey little lady, let me show you what you need. It's like all they want to do is sell me a pink gun. If you're tired of feeling that too, visit Guns for Gals, a specialty firearms boutique designed to empower women with information about firearm safety and to equip them with the means to protect themselves. The owners go out of their way to find products specifically for women, and they actually listen and ask questions to help you find the right products to meet your needs. If they wouldn't own it themselves, they won't sell it. Guns for Gals is located at 2035 Central Circle, Suite 108 in McKinney, Texas. Open Monday 1 to 6 and Tuesday through Thursday 11 to 7. And on weekends, you can find them at a gun show near you. Or shop online at www.gunsforgals.com. Guns for Gals, more than just a gun shop. It's how gun shopping should be.
This is Pastor Evan Gigline. Be glad you're not listening to Table Talk Radio. You're listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Up next, it's Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstine.
Hey guys, I've been out here at the NRA annual meetings in Atlanta, Georgia, and it has been a great time. So far, we've had a lot of fun and wonderful women's leadership luncheon and some good times at the Shoot Like a Girl booth. I will be sharing more about that with you in later episodes. I also wanted to let you know that I have a friend that I met at the NRA meetings last year, and that is Miss Antonia Okafor. She is a campus carry activist, and she's also a face of the NRA. And it leads me to talk about constitutional carry, because that, as a mom, is an issue that I agree with constitutional carry, but I also, as a mom, have concerns about, I guess you could call them gun nuts, but those people who could become dangers to our kids or young people in college situations. So as a mom, it's my feeling that people should be required to take firearm safety courses before they purchase their handguns, which I know in our freedoms probably isn't listed there, but I do have worries about these people who want to express their rights to carry firearms. They're brandishing their firearms in public places and making other people uncomfortable and so forth. And in a college setting, I think that could cause trouble. I definitely think it'd be great to give them the responsibilities, but I also feel that there should be some education in that area before they're allowed to. So it's something that really that's my personal feeling, and I think that I would like to hear your opinions on it. What do you think about that? What do you think about the younger generation and college-age kids carrying the firearms? And should they be empowered to be able to protect themselves on campus when they have late night classes and they're walking to their vehicles alone? Do you want your daughter to carry a handgun with her so that she would be able to stop a threat if somebody attempted to attack her? And also on that note, what other options do these college age men and women have as far as carrying? We've got mace, batons. What do the colleges allow? There's a lot to consider when our children are of age to go to college. So this is something with constitutional carry that is a concern of mine, because obviously I want my child to be safe, but I also want everybody to be safe. And I don't want somebody who is a little overzealous with their handgun and excited to put a bad mark on the face of all gun owners. If you would, give a comment over at Armed Lutheran Radio's Facebook page, or you can comment on my Facebook page, Twitter, or Instagram. They're all under Mia Anstine, and you can find me there. But I'd like to know your thoughts. What do you think of the campus carry? I'll be back next week, and I'll be sharing a little bit more about the Shoot Like a Girl trailer and my experience with it. I've taught with them in the past, and I'll share that with you next week. Talk to you later. Bye.
can read more from Mia and watch her YouTube videos at miaanstine.com.
So you have your concealed carry permit or license to carry. Now what? Now you need a good holster. Not one of those cheap neoprene prophylactic holsters you can buy in the big box stores. You need a holster custom built for the firearm you intend to carry every day. Check out cooksholsters.com. Made in the USA, Cooks holsters are available in a wide range of colors and designs for inside the waistband or outside waistband carry. They carry a lifetime warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit www.cooksholsters.com and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and take 15% off everything in the store. You put in the time and effort to legally carry a firearm for personal protection. Protect your firearm with a custom holster from cooksholsters.com.
It's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. I'm Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. When someone says we don't need that kind of gun, remind them the Founding Fathers determined what rights our Constitution should protect. There's a world of difference between rights and needs. It is not the function of government to tell us what we need or what we don't. Certainly no one needs an assault rifle or a Saturday Night Special, or for that matter, no one needs a Corvette with a high-capacity horsepower engine capable of speeds to 150 miles per hour. But in the hands of honest, responsible individuals, you have the right of choice. You have the right to read books others don't like. You have the right to listen to any radio program we choose. You have the right to dress the way we want to. We also have the right to own firearms of our choice. So the next time someone tells you you don't need something, tell them it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. Join the Second Amendment Foundation today so this message and our Bill of Rights might live. Call 425-454-7012. That's 425-454-7012.
Up next, we're clinging to God and guns with Pastor John Bennett.
How should the Christian view constitutional carry? Well, I want to approach this subject in a bit of an apologetic way. How do you approach this subject with your Christian friends who may or may not agree with the Second Amendment and may or may not agree with the validity of constitutional carry? Now, the first thing I want to say in regards to this is we should avoid being the Bible thumper in this instance. There is a world of difference between the polite evangelist and the person who gets in your face and says, "Repent or you're going to burn in hell." Usually people just shut off their minds and their ears at the person who approaches them in that manner. So first and foremost, let's approach it from a position of politeness, position of respect for the opinions of the other person, because let's face it, not everyone is always going to agree with us. So how exactly should we approach this subject? Well, ask yourself if this is the hill you want to die on. If your relationships with your friends and acquaintances, with your coworkers, is worth getting in an argument over the issue of constitutional carry. It's perfectly fine for two people to agree to disagree and then move on with things. But if there's the possibility that you could convince someone of the validity of constitutional carry, of even the benefits of constitutional carry, well, go for it. So how should we look at it as a Christian? I like to frame this subject in terms of the parable of the Good Samaritan, along with the summary of the second table of the law, love your neighbor as yourself. Within the parable of the Good Samaritan, we are taught that our neighbor is everyone, especially the person who is in need, the person who could benefit from our acts of mercy. When we look at the issue of loving our neighbor as ourselves in regards to constitutional carry, in regards to self-defense, that oftentimes those who are concealed carriers are called upon by their conscience to defend their neighbor, not necessarily those whom they know, but the stranger in their midst. So first and foremost, putting your life on the line for the sake of your neighbor is indeed a God-pleasing and Christian virtue. Now, we also have discussed quite often on this podcast that there is no absolute command in Scripture for personal ownership of firearms. The passage from St. Luke's Gospel, specifically chapter 22, is sometimes used as justification for arguing that the Christian must own firearms. Remember, when Jesus instructed his disciples to buy a sword, it was specifically to the disciples for a specific circumstance. It shouldn't be used as a universal application to all believers. So don't burden your Christian friends that they somehow have a biblical mandate that they must own firearms, and to do the contrary is somehow sin, because let's face it, that just is simply not the case. But love of our neighbor. Love our neighbors as ourselves. One of the most important aspects of this entire issue of constitutional carry comes down to the preservation of life. We could look at it from a legal perspective, because the Constitution says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In many ways, you can look at laws prohibiting personal carry of a firearm as being unconstitutional. But I don't want to get into that part of it. I want to look at it from the Christian perspective. And this is where statistics on gun crime are very, very helpful. I don't always want to rely on statistics when it comes to biblical issues, but the statistic that I like to look at in particular is the one that was published by the Clinton Justice Department. And that study in particular found that firearms are used defensively 2.5 million times a year. The reason I like to look at that statistic in particular is because most often when you are met with opposition to issues like constitutional carry, you're most often talking to someone who is a liberal. And let's face it, liberals are much more likely to listen to statistics published by the Bill Clinton administration than they are to listen to something that's published by, let's say, the NRA. So 2.5 million times a year, according to the Clinton Justice Department, a study published nearly 20 years ago, firearms are used to preserve life. We know what the statistics are regarding the number of deaths by firearms annually, roughly 30,000. That includes suicide. If you remove the issue of suicide, it's roughly 11,000 people a year die because of quote-unquote gun violence, or let's just put it more realistically, a firearm used in an irresponsible and unlawful and immoral way. So firearms are used to preserve life. It is not the only means, of course, by preserving life, but it is indeed a powerful means of preserving life. 2.5 million times a year, firearms are used to defend someone's life. So to wrap things up, when it comes down to it, first we say there is no prohibition from the Word of God for personal ownership of firearms, or let's just put it more generally, weapons of any sort. If we look at the cultural context of the New Testament, sidearms were customarily carried by most average people because they lived in a world that was often dangerous. Travel was by foot. There was highway robbers. There were wild beasts. It could be very easily a person could fall victim to violence or danger as they traveled in their day-to-day life. And sadly, in some ways, that's becoming pretty common in some of the inner city areas in our own country. You look at Chicago and New Orleans and Oakland, Detroit, some of the most, we'll include in that Baltimore because their crime rates have been going through the roof, where it's becoming dangerous for a person, even in the middle of the day, to walk down the streets of some neighborhoods. but by the grace of God, we have been given the freedom to own firearms. So in closing, when it comes to the issue of constitutional carry, there is no prohibition from a scriptural perspective on personal ownership or on personal possession in your daily activities of a weapon of self-defense. At the same time, if a person undertakes that great responsibility, they need to understand that, let's face it, they have to do so responsibly. Part of responsible ownership means if you are able to, get the training that is really preferable so that you know how to handle yourself in a high-stress situation where you might have to use that firearm in self-defense. Also be mindful of the importance of the lives of others so that you never act in a manner that is irresponsible and puts the lives of yourself or others in danger. And lastly, to bring this full circle to where we started, with those who will disagree with you, well, be respectful, be compassionate, and perhaps by your outward behavior, you might just win them over to the side of freedom. Well, that's it today. Thank you, and God's richest blessings.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org.
And that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Thank you all for listening, downloading, and subscribing. I really appreciate you being with us again today. Thank you for making this show a part of your day. I want to thank all of our contributors, Mia Anstine, Aaron Israel, Pastor John Bennett, for their contributions to today's show. Special thank you to all of the sponsors on the program, Galloway Precision, Guns for Gals, U.S. Reloading Supply, and of course, Cook's Holsters, the finest Kydex holsters available in America today. CooksHolsters.com. Check them out and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST for a 10% discount off your order. You get a bigger discount if you join the Reformation Gun Club, by the way. That's another story. Come join us again next week for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Until that time, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. This podcast is made possible by Cook's Holsters and contributions from listeners like you.